Hi, let's talk about composite, direct and indirect. In this case, we will talk about an overlay made in composite and two direct restoration. One will be a class 2 and one will be a slot restoration. This is the clinical appearance of the clinical case. We'll see clearly that on the second premolar, on the distal part, we can see the translucency of the demineralized tissue, so there is a class 2 over there. Then there is already a build-up with the margin relocation on the first upper molar, and there will be a slot restoration on the second molar, on the mesial aspect, facing the overlay. This is the side view and the occlusal relationship between the upper and the lower. This is the X-ray. First of all, I want to say that the lower part is not part of this video and is already been restored, and you will see the final outcome also on the X-ray at the end. This is the X-ray where we can see the situation, and so let's talk quickly about the treatment plan. First of all, it's clearly detectable a D2 decay on the second premolar, on the distal part, and the second treatment will be a slot restoration on the mesial part of the second molar, and then we will have the overlay on composite. We choose the composite because for several reasons. For the thickness of the restoration, and also for the relationship on the antagonist, which was not in ceramic, so we chose the composite, and also because it's a wonderful material and you can repair it when it breaks. This is the operative timing of the treatment you are going to see. So first of all, we have a clinical evaluation. Then this is something that can be quite interesting, the production of an occlusal key. Then, of course, we will have to isolate, and then we prepare the overlay. And after the preparation of the overlay, we will do the restoration on the premolar and on the second molar, because it's easier, of course, when you have more space after the preparation. Then, after having prepared and restored the direct restoration, we will take the impression. Then the lab technician will perform the indirect restoration, so we will have on a second appointment to try it in. Then we will show the cementation procedure, finishing and polishing, and the occlusal check at the end. So let's talk about the occlusal key that me and Salvatore sometimes we love to use, because it allows us to check the thickness during the preparation procedure. So if you see, we are under rubber dam. Under rubber dam, we can't ask the patient to close and check the occlusion because there is the rubber dam. But with this, which is an antagonist made in resin, we can check continuously the thickness of the preparation. How can we prepare an occlusal key? What do we need? We need an alginate impression, so a very simple and cheap impression. You can also take just one side impression. You don't have to take all the mouth. Then we use a pattern resin, which is a resin that, of course, have a shrinkage, but is the less shrinkage of the resin available. So, in fact, they use it, for example, in the lab, or they use it for the implant impressions. Then, of course, a spatula, a dappen, and then some burrs to finish and polish this occlusal key. How to do it? You take the impression and then you pour inside the 3-4 teeth, the teeth that you think can have a stabilization, and the teeth that can be in antagonism for the sector, the isolated sector. Then you pour inside the alginate impression the pattern resin. And this is the final result, and you can first, before finishing, you can check it in the mouth. You see, mesial is not very finished yet, but first of all, before finishing, you have to check if it is stable. So here we have just teeth, but it's more than enough, so we can go and isolate our teeth. So this is how it works. You can take some references. For example, you can check, in this case here, visually this reference and medially this reference, so that when you reposition it, you can always check if it is in the correct position. And as you can see from this picture, you can use a probe during the preparation to check the thickness continuously. Isolation. Isolation is quite important from the very beginning because you can really work smoothly, quicker, and focusing directly on what you have to do. Of course, this is the isolation scenario. If you have watched our lecture about isolation, you know that me and Salvatore think about 3 types of isolation. In this case, of course, it's a quadrant isolation, and in case you can use the pactam in this situation. So let's see quickly the isolation of this clinical case. In this case, we use the technique clamp and rubber dam together. As already mentioned in the lecture about isolation, this is a single operator isolation. So we go in the mouth of the patient, we put the clamp and the rubber dam, and the most of it is done. So then we take our posterior instrument to remove or move the rubber dam from the wings. Of course, you can also use the spatula from the 3 Essential We Restore kit. As soon as possible, we go medially and find a block medially, a counter block. If we find it's much easier. If we don't find, we proceed on the passage of the rubber dam underneath in the interproximal contacts. So single floss, double floss, sometimes some interdental contacts are very tight, some are loosened. Generally in the anterior area it's easier. In this case it was quite hard. The contact areas were quite strong, even in the anterior, as you can see here. But with a little patience we can obtain a nice isolation. In this case you can move, several cases you can move the clamp in order to master and obtain a better adaptation. You see buccally I don't like it, palatally sorry, I don't like it at all. So the clamp is not going, is not nice, it's going on the rubber dam. So I decided to change the clamp. In this case there's a clamp change and choose a different shape. I choose the wingless clamp not because it's wingless, but because I liked more the shape that he had around the tooth, and slowly and gently adapting around the tooth. Now we have a better adaptation and more predictable, and nothing from the oral fluids will come inside our operatory field. So let's start and prepare the overlay of the molar. Why first the molar and then first the overlay preparation, then direct restoration? Because of course after the preparation we will have much more room for prepare the direct the cavities. So what do we need? Tools. Occlusal reduction, you can use a little tapered burr or a cylindrical, is not really important. It can be round-headed or straight like this. This is for the occlusal reduction. We can reduce 1.5 mm, 2 mm maximum of occlusal reduction. Then of course we have to open in the proximal areas, and we use some little small burr. This is a 007 for example, or a bigger one. I think this is 0.12 to open interproximally. And then of course we want to define the margin interproximally. We can use the burr that only cuts on the head, or we can use a sonic tip. I prefer to work with the sonic, but they are quite expensive, and some of the colleagues can afford or can work in a consultant office where they don't have a sonic instrument, so they can achieve the same target, same scenario with the burr that cuts on the head. What about the margin? Buccal. What about the margin? Buccal and palatal can be straight or can be bevel. We prefer to perform a big chamfer that can be obtained with a football, like in this case. Of course, we will have a flat margin medially and distally, and we will have a big chamfer palatally and buccally. How to connect these two faces? We will use this kind of burrs in order to have a smooth connection between the four faces of the preparation. And of course, the round preparation buccally has to follow interproximally smoothly, so we can choose different diameter of round burrs according to the need. We will see in the video, it will be much more clear. So let's see the preparation of the overlay. Always having the opportunity to check the thickness of the preparation is something very nice. On the interproximal area between the 7 and the 6, there is the interguard, which is a protection. It's quite tight and strong. It's nice to work with. We know the thickness of this burr, and so we know how to go inside the two structure in order to reduce. So if you want to reduce, for example, 0.5, 1 millimeter, 1.5, like in this case, you choose the correct the correct size and diameter of the burr. So after the preparation, the initial preparation, a hint for the beginners especially is to put all the burr or part of the burr according to the size of the diameter, making some notches, some depressions, and then connect them. This is nothing new, this is a quite old trick from the prosthetic world, but it's quite easy in order to provide the correct thickness. The protection is quite important because we don't want to harm or damage the other tooth. Now it's time to prepare interproximally, so we use a very small diameter. And why we want to prepare interproximally, even if, for example, in this case is sound? Because of course we have to go and to give the correct emergence profile from the margin preparation, and we need some space to allow the technician to provide a very nice emergence profile of the indirect. As I said, me and Salvatore love very much this kind of protection. This is quite tough. You can also use a simple matrix, but this is very nice. It's called the interguard. In this case, we are preparing the slot. We start slowly with the low diameter, and we move from buccal to palatal in order to prepare this box. It takes time. It has to take time because we don't want to prepare too much. We don't want to go too deep inside because otherwise it will be very difficult to restore. And we need the proper amount of time to prepare the correct box. Of course, as soon as we can, we can move to a bigger diameter in order to make things very quicker, of course. This is the big diameter. As you can see, there is a slight demineralization on the distal part, and of course we remove it by preparing with the burr. The build-up was made in another appointment, so it's not an older restoration, it's a very good build-up that was made after the endo treatment, and there is also slight marginal relocation. You see there is a demineralization on the distal part, and this is a sonic tip. There are sonic tips, there are ultrasonic tips, or there are burrs that cut on the head. In this case we use the sonic tip in order to slowly define the cervical margin, but also the axial walls of the interproximal area. As long as you see white, you have to prepare because this is demineralized. We are inside the white spot. It will become a decay sooner or after, and so we have to prepare and remove all this stuff. Look at the wedge. The wedge is a trick. The wedge is needed to protect the rubber dam. The wedge is a sacrifice wedge. You can prepare it. We generally prepare with a burr, with a sonic instrument, because if we do this, we always will have the correct amount of space between the cervical margin and the papilla, let's talk like this. You see, the wedge is prepared, and then you can also produce a customized wedge. That's why me and Salvatore like very much to work with wooden wedges, because you can customize them. Now we start to prepare mesial. Mesial is composite, mesial is built up. There is a never-ending fight against margin relocation and closing overlays on a direct restoration. I'm talking about margin relocation. Margin relocation will be the focus of another lecture here on Osteocom. By the way, if the restoration is away from the connective periodontal tissue attachment, me and Salvatore think that we are completely safe. Look at this. This is the occlusal key that we are checking. We have a nice distance on the distal side. We have a nice distance mesially. There is not good at all instead in the center part. So that's why I moved back to the burr that I used for the occlusal reduction. And so I used it to provide the correct thickness of the future indirect restoration. So this is another notch that I created. This is another depression, and then I connect with the other part of the restoration. It takes some time, so you can speed up very much, but the important is to provide the correct thickness. Look now with the probe, now we have a uniform thickness. Now it's time to connect the faces, so to connect the buccal face with the interproximal area. This is a chamfer, but the important part is the latest part, the working, the head of this burr is providing a rounded shape of the restoration. Why do we want a rounded shape and not a flat one? Of course, a flat one will work very well, no problem, but these allow a more surface of enamel, so a higher surface for adhesion, and then it also blends better from an aesthetic point of view, because some patients smile, while smiling they uncover also the mesial part, the buccal part of the first premolar, the first molar, sorry. Also some people, also the second molar, of course, there are people that just show the lower teeth, so it's important to select the proper design also from an aesthetic point of view, considering also the smile line of our patients. So this is the preparation of the mesiobuccal connection. Now we prepare the buccal part. The buccal part is prepared with this big chamfer. Of course, you don't have to think about that it is an olive. We have to think about the diameter of the preparation we want to provide. So also in this situation we can start with a little notch of preparation, then we connect the mesial margin with the distal part. This helps in positioning the overlay on the tooth. Of course, the most important part in positioning are the mesial and the distal boxes, but of course, and also helps in mimicking the passage, the aesthetic passage, the aesthetic boundaries between the tooth and the restoration. So this is the connection between the buccal and the distal, in this case made with this little burr. If we don't have space, we can use a flame. One important thing to consider when we talk about adhesive restoration, not focusing particularly on some material, is that we want rounded edges. Once again, we are checking the thickness with the occlusal. We don't want the straight angles, because everything has to be smooth, no tension inside, the cement can flow away smoothly, and is not like in the golden era where there are that wonderful gold inlays, gold onlays, wonderful treatments, but there was not adhesive dentistry. Their mechanical retention was purely mechanical retention, so they needed to have straight areas, straight faces and preparation. Instead, while we can use and rely on adhesive dentistry, we use a rounded surface. Look at this, we put back the protection not to harm or damage the second molar. And now with the olive we create a smooth connection between the faces. So the preparation is almost finished. We just need to finish the connections and finish and polish all the restoration. Of course, it works even if the restoration is not completely smooth, but the impression and also the cementation procedures work smoothly if the margins are very, very smooth. This is the last connection between the distal box and the buccal portion. And once again, some finishing and smoothing on the occlusal part because it was prepared with the rough, quite rough burr. And you see the angles are removed, are smoothed. What about the margin? The margin on the tooth is completely on enamel except on the mesial part that is in composite. As I said, is a margin relocation. So now let's move to the other two treatments. Before the impression, we have to finish the direct restorations. So we have to prepare the class 2, sorry, on the second premolar and the slot preparation on the second molar. What do we need? The tools. Here they are. So box preparation of the premolar is made with this tapered burr. We don't have to use a convergent walls because we are not relying on mechanical retention, but we rely on adhesive retention. And so we can also have divergent walls. Then box preparation can be also prepared with these burrs. Then what about infected dentin? We will use a low-speed carbide round burr. Then how to define the box of the class 2? We will define with a burr that cuts on the head, and how to define the margins of the wall with a flame. And if we have a sonic tip, we can have the two together because the sonic tip has the property to prepare axial walls, also the cervical wall, and also has a nice connection between the two, between the faces of the box. And sometimes we want to correct some cervical anatomy because it's difficult to restore. So we can use an EVA handpiece or a reciprocating handpiece that helps us in removing some unwanted anatomy. And then we can use also some sonic endotip that can be useful in the preparation of the slot restoration. Once again, I wanted to focus on the preparation of the overlay. This is the design that we made with olive burr, and this is a reference. It was an article from Cementation and Mangani on 2016 that they developed this kind of preparation, especially on the buccal part. Let's get back to the preparation of the class 2. So we can go inside the cavity, prepare the cavity. You may think that it is a very big burr. Yes, it's a very big burr, but the bigger is, the more control you have. Because the smaller is, the most difficult. Here we have plenty of spaces to use a very big burr, so why not to use it? This preparation, you see, there is the demineralization we have to prepare. The demineralization follows the path of the decay that goes down the dentin, then from the enamel dentin junction goes towards the pulp. This is a very nice vision of the demineralized structure and how a lesion from the smooth surfaces goes inside the tooth. So from a big surface towards a smaller one. Instead, the caries on the sulcus, on the grooves, start from a little part and becomes bigger. So these I moved to a low-speed carbide burr to remove infected dentin, and then moved back to the sonic instrument to define well the cervical margin and the axial wall. I repeat, this can be changed or substituted by a flame and the burr that cut only on the head. Look at once again the burr that is destroyed, ruined by the instruments. We don't really care. It's very useful. This is the EVA handpiece that can allow you to modify unwanted anatomy or uncomfortable anatomies that will be very nice to restore. And so we want to modify. This allows us to make a more straight preparation. Of course,